In this video, we're gonna talk about the who, the why, and how to niche down for your video agency. What's going on, guys? Luis Trevino back here with another video, and I'm excited to bring this one to you guys because the biggest question that I get every single time when I am consulting with a video agency is, should I be niching down? Who should I be niching down with? And oftentimes we come into this whole analysis paralysis and we don't really know how we should go about it, which niche should we choose, and it just kind of turns into this whole thing, right? So I'm gonna give you guys a quick framework, but real quick, if this is the first time watching any of my videos, let me actually share my screen here and walk you through a little bit about who I am and why you should be listening to me. So I've been running an agency for 15 years now. I started back in the day, back in 2010, I started my first agency. I started a creative agency because my background is in graphic design. Then that's how I got into photography and videography, and I have a minor in business. And I was broke for a very long time until 2018, I finally figured it out. And so in the last 4 years, we've done about 150K a month. Last 4 years, we've done about 5.3 million. That's in one of our agencies, and then one of our other agencies did 2, so total about 7 million. And yeah, our creative agency wasn't profitable. We struggled a lot. It was a lot of feast and famine, a lot of reinventing the wheel, and we weren't profitable. And it wasn't until I started my agency Everbull, this is us down here, we got to 85K in 3 years. And then once we figured out the process, because building a business is doing just the right things in the right order, we grew another agency in 2020 to 120K a month in 3 months. And that's because at the time I was also working with Alex Hormozi. This is our testimonial wall. These are the results that we've gotten for our clients. You can go and check us out. Here's our Instagram for Everbull. Here's our Instagram for Engage. And this is actually the plaque that I got from Alex Hormozi's from the company called Alan, which is one of the software companies that he created. And that's my company name. And that's my congratulations for hitting 100K a month with his Alan software. So I'm not just some dude on the internet who built an agency and then got it to 30K a month. I was listening to a video with this guy who's like, yeah, I kind of got my agency to 30K and I think I'm going to start coaching now. I'm like, dude, you haven't even scratched the surface, bro. Sorry, I just had to get that off my chest. So ultimately, I've been doing this for a while. I have a track record for helping people grow their business, and yeah, so that's why you should listen to me. So let's dive right in, right? As I said before, the who, the why, and the how to niche down in your video agency. We're talking about the why, selecting a niche, so how to go about it, and then which niche should you ultimately check out. So let's go ahead and dive right in, right? So like I mentioned before, the biggest problem is that people get stuck and they don't really know how to move forward. So my intention for this video, guys, is to help you get unstuck and figure out a process so that you can actually take steps forward so you can ultimately get to the outcome, right? Which is choosing a niche. But let's talk about why it's important, right? So first of all, it's much easier and scalable. So a lot of the reasons why people hit a ceiling in their video agency is because of the fact that it is too time and labor intensive. So one of the reasons why this gentleman that I was listening to was talking about he wanted to start now coaching was because he's like, oh man, yeah, operations are too hard. I don't want to build a bigger team and all this. I think those were the two biggest things, right? Talked about hitting a ceiling. And I'm like, dude, that's how you know if you're actually a good business person or not. Because literally building a business past that revenue number is literally all operations. This is how you know if you can build a solid team and have really good operations. Because ultimately, for those of you who are sub 30K, the biggest problem you have right now is, how do I bring on clients? How do I market myself, right? But once you figure it out, it's actually the easy part. Building a really legit business is all in the operations. It's all in the team building, right? And so if you actually want to scale past 30K, I would say it goes back down to the model, the operations, and the team, okay? And so the reason why oftentimes people can't scale past that is because they're not niched down. They don't have AKA a productized offer and a service, right? And so it's much easier to scale if you have one niche, if you have 1 to 2 services, you have one offer, one system that just works. And this is when people talk about you need to have a productized offer. It's literally just having a productized service, meaning that you work with, and I mean, when you first start off, you can work with multiple clients, but it really, like, having a productized or standardized offer really goes back down to you're doing the same thing for every single person every single time. And part of the big problem why people hit a ceiling is that they're doing too much custom work. This was our issue with our creative agency. We worked with anybody and everybody, and we did everything. Okay, like if we could make money off of them, we did it. Right? From like web development, like literally software development, from like video shoots, like we did it all, right? And so that was the problem, because it's really hard to scale when you're always having to put a ton of mental energy into solving like a particular problem for every single person, and it's just draining, and that's why people get burned out. So you're gonna have a lot easier of a time if you can, just boil it down to a handful of services, ultimately one niche, right? But one offer, one system that you just do over and over and over again. And that's how you scale, because once you can just lock in sales and marketing, you're doing client acquisition, well, then your business should function as a factory, right? This is how you can ultimately remove yourself. I'm skipping around here. Because when you create a system where it's repeatable every single time, you can then hire a team so that you can remove yourself, and your team can will actually know what to do, because it is the same process over and over and over again, right? So hopefully you guys got me on that one, right? Another big thing is that when you try to appeal to everyone, you just appeal to no one, okay? And so you have to take into consideration the fact that you have competition, right? You are not the only person in the industry that is offering these services. And the people that make money, the people that you want as clients, they want to work with an expert. They don't want to work with the generalist, right? They're willing to pay a premium to work with the best, right? If I needed heart surgery, who am I going to go? The expert heart surgeon, or just my, local doctor that sees me for whatever random stuff, like the generalist doctor, right? I'm gonna go with the freaking expert, right? It's like common sense, okay? So I hope that makes sense to you guys. And so when you can actually solve a problem, when people see you as an expert and you can solve a problem, that's how you generate demand for yourself. And a lot of the reasons why you are not generating demand, why you're not getting clients, is because people see you as a generalist, right? They don't really think of you when, they need a specific problem solved. And so the interesting thing is that being an expert in one thing, you're actually assumed to be an expert in everything. It's such an interesting thing that happens, when you start positioning yourself as an expert, let's just say in one particular industry, you actually get other people hitting you up saying hey man, I saw what you're doing for this industry. Can you do the same thing for us? And then that's actually when if you really want to expand, and into a different industry, by all means. And so for me, when I finally figured this out, I started working with medical aesthetic offices, and we started getting hit up from chiropractics. And sometimes we got hit up by some dentists, right? And then one of my clients, he works with optometrists, and then he got hit up by a dentist, and he's like, hey, I saw what you're doing with these guys. Can you do the same thing for us? Locks in a 9-location dental office. Let's go. And that's actually Rob, who's in the channel, landed a $26,000 client. Go and check out that interview if you want to listen to it, okay? So the other thing too is that you'll actually be able to remove yourself from the day-to-day. And this is the most important thing, going back to that whole productized offer, right? If you have a system that just works and you do it, you fulfill on it the same every single time, well, then you can actually remove yourself, because you will ultimately build that system. You will create processes for every single step, and then you'll create a manual, AKA SOPs, that you ultimately give to a team member, and then they fulfill on that. Okay, so if you want to have time, if you want to have more freedom in your business, please do this. Please implement this, right? If you don't want to be burned out, if you don't want to be doing every single thing in your business, you have to do this, right? Fulfillment will actually become streamlined because of the fact if streamlined, it'll be faster and easier to deliver, right? Because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you become an expert at that thing, right? And so ultimately, when you decide to do custom work, that's when you get sucked back into the business. All right. So I hope that makes sense. Like when like every time you decide to work with a different industry, or you decide to do a custom, offer for a particular client, right? You want to say yes to everything. Well, you're the brains of the operation. So ultimately, you're going to get sucked back in, which then means that, you're not going to be able to build a business that runs itself, a business that ultimately can serve you, right? Instead, you are the one serving the business. And it's not like, if you want to go on vacations, if you want to spend more time with your family, if you want to do whatever it is that you want to do, go work on creative projects or, passion projects, etc. This is why. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now, let me transition here by saying there is no such thing as a perfect niche, all right? But there is a niche that is going to be, let's just say perfect for you, right? That's like an absolute statement. I hate absolute statements. If you know me, that's one of the things that I have a pet peeve on. The world isn't black and white. I hate being those sort of people that are like very polarizing. But there is kind of like an industry that I would say is more so right for you. Okay, I don't think, anyway. So how do we find that niche that is more aligned with, with what you want? Okay, and so that's what we're going to go into next. So ultimately selecting a niche. By the way, if you want this document, go ahead and follow me on Instagram and then just message me the word niche and I will hook you up. Cool. All right, so selecting a niche, right? So there's 3 points that I want to go into, and then we'll go into the niche selection checklist. So let's dive right in. So point number 1 is that how do you go about selecting a niche? Well, first of all, what is low-hanging fruit? Okay, like who do you know? Who have you worked with? And so if you are you've been running a business for a while, you should already have people that you've worked with before. If you're totally brand new, this video really isn't designed for you. But you can still leverage these principles. It's like, hey man, like who do you know, right? Do you have a family member? Do you have a cousin, a brother? Do you have a father, right? Do you have an uncle? People that are involved in business, okay? And so ultimately, that is low-hanging fruit. Go have a conversation with them, right? Go ask them and see if it's something that you could ultimately do for them, right? So who have you worked with, okay? Who have you worked with in the past? So that's like one of the first questions that I usually ask people when I work with them. It's like, who have you worked with in the past? And then based off when they give me a list, right? Then we kind of dig down even further. And so that goes to my point number 2, which is like, in the beginning, it's okay for you to select your top 3 to 4 industries while you figure out who you can get the best results for. And like, this is big because like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, a lot of people are ultimately stuck in analysis paralysis. They don't know which niche to choose or anything like that, right? And I often tell people, look, make a decision by not making a decision. Instead, let's just make an educated guess and let's pick your top 3, man, because it is really hard picking that one niche. Like, it's kind of like asking somebody to marry them, right? How do you know if that's the one, right? When you know, you just know. I'll say that. I just usually recommend, pick your top 3, man. Pick your top 4, and essentially you're trying to ask 3 questions when you're trying to pick those 3 to 4. And that ultimately is going to be, actually, maybe 4 questions here. My bad. Number 1, do they make money? Okay, like who can pay is going to be the big question. And this is really important, guys, because so I showed you my agencies. Actually, let me backtrack here a little bit. When I the reason why I say this is because this was my experience. So when I first started working and started doing more like advertising, which is what I preach, and you should definitely be offering as a service for your video agency, is I worked with an e-commerce, I worked with an event venue place, and then I worked with a home security company. And then my 4th client was a medical aesthetic office, and we blew it up for that client. And so this client made right here, they would get 7 leads on a weekly basis. We got them 126 leads in 7 days. They made 25 grand off of that. Okay. And so that was my home run. right? So what I did is that I just doubled down on it. All right. So that's ultimately why I just recommend taking this path, because, it like ultimately you'll feel a lot more confident because you would have like actually tested the things and then you figured out the one that works the best. And that is just the general rule in business, guys. Like when you are overthinking stuff and you don't know what to do, the best way to do things is just come up with a hypothesis, put it out in the marketplace, like create an offer, put it out in the marketplace, and let the market give you feedback, right? And then you can iterate from there. And this is why taking imperfect action is just so important, because a lot of people just kind of stay spinning their wheels and then they never make progress. I'd rather have you go out there, make mistakes, and get better at and then like just overall have improved little by little, right? And so questions you want to ask yourself, right? Do they make money? Who can pay? And this is important because, like, for me, I work with medical spas and we work with dentists / orthodontists. I can charge my dentists and orthodontists a lot more than I do my medical spas because my dentists and orthos make more money. Hands down, I'm providing the same service, I can charge them more. And so you're going to be better off if you can work with an industry that makes money. Okay, the more money they make, the more money you can make them, the more money you can charge them. Okay, who do you enjoy working with? All right. Number 3 is who can you get the best results for? And look, with these two, I usually recommend it based off the individual. Like me personally, I don't really care about this one too much because I just enjoy helping businesses. Like my parents were entrepreneurs, I'm an entrepreneur, I grew up in it and I lived it myself. Okay, so I'm just in general passionate about helping people grow their business. Okay, and so for me, I wasn't like particularly in love working with med spas. Like, I mean, I'm not the most aesthetically pleasing person. I don't really care about that stuff. I hate going to the dentist. I always thought it was ironic that I was working with dentists because I don't have a nice smile. And on top of that too, I hate going to the dentist. So I just thought that was like really funny. But I got really good results for them. Okay. And so when I got really good results for them, that's when I doubled down. So that's what was important for me. Figure out what's important for you and then go from there. It's going to be, I would often ultimately say it's a balance between these two things. And then number 4, I put a number 4 because it is important, but it's not the most important thing. And one of the things and it's just something for you to keep in mind, is like who can meet the demand. Because ultimately, if you're working with these types of people, you want to ensure you're getting them a result. But when you oftentimes, if you work with somebody who can't meet the supply, right? Or I'm sorry, that doesn't have the supply to meet the demand, well, then ultimately, they're going to fire you. Okay. So this actually happened to us a lot because we were really good at helping our dentists make money. One of our clients made 80 grand in a week. Okay. And then they fired us the month after because we helped them make a ton of money, and now they had all this like patients that they needed to fulfill on, so they had to let us go, right? Because they just couldn't support, bringing on more patients or whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like you're going to be better off if you select an industry that has a limited number of, supply, right? Again, it's not the most important thing, but I would really focus on these 3, and then this is kind of like an optional thing. All right. Okay, so let's go into the checklist. So once you boil it down, hey, we work with medical spas, and work with an orthodontist, and work with the car dealership, and maybe a law firm. Okay. All right, cool. So what are some things to keep in mind when you're selecting these industries? So let's go down. So this is a checklist that I actually have my clients go through, the people that I consult and mentor, which is what is the TAM of the market? And TAM stands for total addressable market size. Okay. And so you always want to look at the TAM prior to creating your offer and then running ads, because you should be running ads to grow your business. It is the fastest way to grow it. And typically you want to have the TAM minimum 30,000 in the US and less than 100,000. Okay. 30,000 is going to give you enough so that you can have good scale on ads. And so this was actually a problem when we first started working with medical spas, because we sub-niched the niche. We were working specifically with the technology called CoolSculpting, which is kind of like a body contouring technology. And ultimately, there's only about 5,000 offices in the United States that actually offered that service. And so like us bringing on a client got really expensive because there was just not a huge market size. So we were kind of forced to expand and offer services outside of that one particular body contouring service, right? And so you want to make sure at least minimum there's 30,000 and 100,000. So for dentists, I mean, it was awesome because there was a lot of dentists. There's over 200,000 dentists in the United States. And so to get it between the $30,000 to $100,000, 30,000 to 100,000 market size, we sub-niche to work with Invisalign and braces. That was kind of our bread and butter. So one of the things that I always recommend when niching down is like sub-niche the niche. So you want to select an industry, you want to select a service within the industry, and then you can choose like an ideal client within that industry. Okay, cool. So you just want to make sure that there's a good size there. You want to make sure that you can find them easily online, like on Facebook groups, on Instagram, LinkedIn groups, online forums, local chambers, Reddit, etc. I would suggest that you can find them on Facebook and Instagram. Okay, that's where we advertise. That's how we've grown our businesses tremendously, and it's always been these two platforms. And so I would highly recommend that you want to target people that are online in these two platforms. All right, don't target astronauts, right? As like a really intense example. They would be hard to find, and there are not many of them, right? Just to kind of give you an example there. And then can you get a meeting with the decision maker to go through the diagnosis with them in their sales process, right? As opposed to a standard quote or like bidding process. So you want to make sure that whoever you're going to target, that you can actually have a conversation with the decision makers. So that way your sales process is a lot more streamlined and it's not a huge sales journey. Okay. All right. And then from there, it's like, do they have a pre-existing desire that you can solve? And so do they want to make money? Okay, like that. This is one thing, and I'll go ahead and read this paragraph for you guys, because I think it's just super important, and I think a lot of people get this wrong. When you're creating offers and you're creating your services, you're trying to think of what services you should offer, right? We're not trying to create desire in the market. Okay, we simply need to look at the market segment and find the pre-existing desire and channel that into the offer we make. In other words, you want to optimize your fulfillment and offer around the market's pre-existing desire, not try to change the market's desire to fill your fulfillment. So oftentimes we think, oh, okay, I'm good at making videos. Let me just go sell that, right? And so it's backwards. Like you think of fulfillment first, and then you go and like try to sell it. Where it's like instead, you should look at the market first, identify markets that have pre-existing desires, meaning they have problems, they have needs, right? And then you should look at what your fulfillment is and be like, how can my fulfillment, my service, solve that problem, right? So you want to just make sure there's that pre-existing desire. You want to make sure that you're working with people that actually have a need, that have a problem, right? And that you then tailor your fulfillment, tailor your services so that you can solve that problem. And the biggest problem with video production businesses is that they just solve one part of the problem. They don't solve the entire problem. And so there's just a half measure, right? And that's why oftentimes it's really hard to acquire business because people don't care about your videos. So I have other videos that talk about that. So go and check those out if you want to learn more about that. So anyway, do they have a pre-existing desire that you can solve? So just super important. All right, cool. So we talked about the why, we talked about the how, and now let's talk about which niches, right? Okay. So like I said before, there is no perfect niche, but I just want to give you guys some ideas, and so these are in no particular order as far as like ranking and which the best ones they are. But I think these are all really good ones that you could potentially explore. And when you ask that question of who do you know, well, then you can ultimately kind of filter based off of these right here. Okay. So first of all, local medical practices. So this is our bread and butter. This is what we specialize in. So I know a few buddies of my business partner in my mentorship program runs a $3 million agency that works with chiropractics and PTs. Okay. So ultimately, this is a pretty good industry. The chiropractics are like the real estate agents of the medical field. There's just a ton of them. So then there's actually a lot of agencies. So it is saturated, but that means that there's opportunity. Okay. Dentists are saturated too, but I built a 7-figure agency within that industry too, even though it's really saturated. And let's debunk this whole saturation myth, right? Like every industry for the most part is saturated. All right, so let's just say that. Okay, you don't like. When you really think about the numbers, if you want to build a 7-figure agency, more often than not, you just need 1% of the market. And more often than that, you really just need less than 1%. There's 200 dentists in the United States. There's 200,000 dentists in the United States. 1% is 2,000, right? Did I get that right? Or 200? Let's find out. Yeah, 2,000. Okay. Can you really manage 2,000 clients? No, right? You would need 1.1% or whatever, right? We had 80 clients and we were a 7-figure agency. Okay, so yeah, like this is where it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a stupid way to think, and I apologize if I'm offended you by saying that. Orthodontists are a good one. We work with both of these. Optometrists are really good too. Make money. These make a lot of money. Physical therapy, you can charge more if you can help them engineer them making a lot of money. Dermatology is a good one. Something that I didn't put on here is like just plastic surgeons. A lot of plastic surgeons are already like, if they already do well, they do well. But ultimately what you could do is like a lot of them still want to kind of build a brand, so maybe you can go after that, and that can be part of like the video services that you offer, right? Next is fitness and wellness centers. So these are obviously all good. Now, a lot of these are technically like lower ticket services, but this is how obviously Hormozi was charging 16 grand for his services by just helping them make a lot of money. And you can still charge a decent amount. Minimum, I recommend $2,000 a month. And ultimately, the way that these businesses make money is by reoccurring revenue. So even if it's low ticket, they're keeping clients, and then their money just basically starts stacking. Okay, so there's some good opportunity here. These guys definitely want to keep making content. Real estate agents, and something to keep in mind with all of these is like, go after the cream of the crop. Like, don't be afraid to go after the people that like franchises, people with multiple locations, different things like that. Same thing for the real estate agents. Try to go after the real estate agents that are making good money, the ones that are already successful, because those are the ones that want to build a brand and then they want more, right? You can also just go after like bigger firms. So specifically for like real estate agents and stuff like that, go after the big firms so that you can ultimately charge more, right? So property management companies, boutique real estate firms, right? Independent real estate agents. Home improvement construction companies, these are really good because most of these guys, like if they do well, they make good money, okay? Like one of my clients works with roofing companies. One of my other clients working with pool companies. So landscaping, let's just say /pool companies. And one of my clients made like with just, I think like $6,000 made his client like over $500,000. I think it was like 600,000 or something like that. So there's a lot of opportunity here for you to make these guys a lot of money. And like roofing companies, it's like a $25,000 roof replacement, or like, it's very high ticket. So there's a lot of good opportunity there. I would stay away from the general contractors because again, they're like generalists. But if you can go after like plumbing, HVAC, I have another client that does that, landscaping, pool companies, roofing. Sometimes these interior designers can be pretty good. And then, cabinetry woodwork is a little bit more selective, but I think my top 3 would be these, okay? One that a lot of people don't really like talk a lot about, but dude, car dealerships, like they make money. They have most of the time, an unlimited supply, right? Because they're trying to sell as many cars as possible, and they have a lot of salespeople. And those guys need content, dude. And so going after car dealerships is like really low hanging fruit. But all of these are good. Detailing, repair, car washes, like body shops. I don't know how I feel 100% about the car washes. But again, that's a man. Actually, you know what? That would actually be a good one. Even in my local area recently, there's just been a boom for car washes, like specifically like automated car washes. And so I think a thing that they usually have to do is like, how do we stay competitive? And so if you can help them have like some kind of presence, I think that could be a competitive advantage, because there's just so much competition, but then it just stacks, like recurring revenue just stacks. So I think that's a good one. Legal and financial services, dude, law firms, like these guys obviously make bank and they need to have a social presence. So if you can go and sell them and then plus offer them ads on top of that so that you can extend their reach, dude, these guys make bank, and it's definitely somebody to ultimately go after. CPAs and accountants, financial advisors, local insurance agents, mortgage officers. One of my buddies works with mortgages, mortgage officers, $4,000 a month retainer. Really good, like ultimately like industry to go into. But all of these two are like really good. And then my last one is just like brands and e-commerce or direct to consumer brands, right? I think this one you have to be really careful because some brands like have really thin margins, or some like e-commerce have really thin margins. But I think that if you can find the ones that are like actually doing really, really well, there's like good money there. So yeah. All right, guys. Hopefully you found this video insightful. How long is, man, 30 minutes. All right. But I think a good training overall. Hopefully you guys got some value. If you have questions, hit me up. Let me know if you liked it. Leave me a comment, give me a like, give me a share this with your friends. And also, if you want this document, go to my Instagram, follow me, and send me a message with the word niche, and I will hook you up. All right. Thank you guys. Catch you in the next one.